Hello everyone, welcome to another one of our videos on Zebanica YouTube channel. My name is Barry and today we are going to talk about the vocabulary related to work. This fantastic subject that all of us have to deal with in our everyday life. So I know that in a lot of occasions you have to tell people what you do and how you do it. So this lesson could be really useful to you, or you may want to take the IELTS or TOEFL and you could use this lesson to learn enough resources to talk about this particular topic in the exam and get a good score. So let's start. When you go to work, usually at 8 or 9 a.m., you start work. So sometimes you need to register that with a card or something like that, or you have to sign somewhere like, okay, 7 a.m. I entered. So you clock on. That's clock on. So usually you have to do this in a large factories, so where the employees have to clock on, or in the offices nowadays, because it's getting very easy using a little machine and you have a card, so you beep, clock on. And when you leave the office at 4 or 5 in the afternoon or the factory, you clock off. So you could use these two in order to I don't know, talk about the time that you clock on. Like I clock on at 7 and clock off at 4. So that's that. Another word for clock off, you could say knock off. Like, where do you knock off work? When do you knock off work? I knock off work at 5. So it means finished. I go out. Okay, now flexi time. Nowadays, especially, we have something called flexi time. You can guess from the word itself. Flexi comes from flexible and time. So flexible time, it means that you have more freedom to choose like when do you want to start and when do you want to finish. So it's up to you. Like you can choose, you have options. It's not 9 to 5 every day. You have the right to choose and you have some options. So it's flexi time. So you could have a day job or a night job. A day job is more popular, like most people have day jobs where they go to work in the morning and go home in the afternoon or evening. But some people have night jobs, like I don't know, people who work in the airport. Maybe they have night jobs. So that's that. I sometimes have a night job. As a teacher, sometimes I take online classes and they are at night. So it depends. It could be anything. So as you know, full-time and part-time jobs. Full-time is usually 8 hours a day and for 5 days a week. So that adds up to 40 hours a week. You work in one place and one place only because you're working full-time. And well, you could work full-time and have part-time jobs, but I mean, you get the idea. And part-time jobs, like some people can have 3 or 4 part-time jobs where they work 4 or 5 hours a day or even a week. So I have a part-time job. For example, I work 6 hours a week. It's not full-time, and that's that. So some jobs, they work in shifts, like such as hospitals. It's the best example, like doctors or nurses, because hospitals are open 24/7, and 24/7 means always day and night. they work shifts. Like sometimes they work in, like they work day shifts and sometimes night shifts. And it could be people in hospital, drugstores, pharmacies, even airports. They could have shifts, or factories even, or I don't know, big offices where they are open all the time, like for example, support lines. They sometimes work in shifts, day and night. So that's that. And overtime. As you might guess, overtime, it means that you work extra hours. Like you are supposed to work 8 hours, but you stay for 2 more hours, and that's overtime. So sometimes overtime is paid and sometimes it's not. And when it's not, it's not fair because it should be paid. So you could work overtime. Like I work overtime a lot, like every day nearly. So I don't get paid. That's not a good job. If you get paid, okay, but if you don't, no. Okay. Typically, you have a time to go and have lunch. What do we call that time? Lunch break. Yes. So usually it's for half an hour and you have a lunch break. You may have it one by one, like when you go to lunch, your colleagues are at work and then you come back and then they can go and have their lunch break. Or you could have the lunch break all together. Like in some companies it works that way, like in that half an hour company doesn't work, nobody's there. But other offices or companies, not like that, like it's one by one or one group, and after that another group. So you can take a day off when you don't want to go to work. Basically, maybe you are a little maybe you feel a little bit under the weather, or maybe you have some errands to run or things like that. Maybe you have to go to the school meetings, so you may take a day off. And as I said, you may be sick and take a day off. But if the sickness is prolonged and continued and for a long time, you have to take a sick leave. Like, for example, it usually happens when you have to do surgeries and in dangerous situations, when you need to rest all the time, you take the sick leave. And when you are pregnant and when you want to have a baby, you don't go to work, basically. So that's maternity leave. So you take the maternity leave. And all of these things are paid, okay? Sick leave and maternity leave, they are paid. And basically all of these are taking the time off work. So take time off. If you don't go to work for any reason, you are taking time off. So sometimes in some jobs you have to meet the deadlines. Like if you are working for an engineering company, usually you have to deliver a project to different clients, so you have to meet the deadlines, and that could be really serious. Like people could get fired if they don't meet the deadlines for many times. And basically you have some objectives that you have to check. Like you have annual objectives, like in a year what you are hoping to accomplish, and in a month or maybe short term. Actually, I've never worked for somewhere that it had meet deadlines or I don't know, some specific objectives. Well, of course, yes, our objectives, our teachers, the teachers' objectives are our students' needs, basically. So preparing and providing whatever they need is our main objective. So that's that. It's usually works for big companies and big brands. You may have a heavy workload, like I know that most people go to work, but not all of them have heavy workload. Like they could take the day easy, like they just sit there and maybe they work for some hours a day and take it easy for other times. But I mean, in some jobs you have heavy workload, like you have a lot of projects to do and you don't have enough time to do them, so it's a heavy workload. And it's not fair. Like if you have heavy workload, they should employ somebody else. And you can have long working hours, and this usually happens for let's say people who are in charge. They have long working hours, or the people at the bottom of the employment chain, like they're not very skilled or things like that, so they have to work long hours, and that happens then. So you sometimes can take early retirement. In some countries there's a law that you can retire after 20 years of work, so you can take the early retirement. In some countries you basically can't, and it has to be 30 years. So usually, like in my country, women usually do that, like they take early retirement. If your employers decide to terminate your contract and don't work with you anymore, you get the sack or get fired. It's not a good thing to happen. If you get the sack or get fired, it might be for different reasons, like difference in opinion, or maybe you're just a lazy person and you don't show up, or you don't meet the deadlines, or things like that. I don't know. It could be anything basically, but if you're not lucky enough, you may get the sack or get fired. So you sometimes can be made redundant. So this usually happens where the company usually has the budget problem, or they feel that your position is no longer necessary for the company, so you are made redundant. This happened usually during the financial crisis in countries like last year. In my country, a lot of people were made redundant, and it's not a good thing to happen basically, because you may be a really good worker and punctual and meet the deadlines and all that, but still you can be forced to not go to work anymore. That's not a good thing to happen. So finger crossed that you all have good jobs and you all can use this vocabulary to describe your job and the details. Don't forget the details. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave it below. Thank you very much and have a nice time.